I'm Mitch.
This is Keith.
And you're listening to the Layman's Term Podcast.
I don't know why that cracks me up every time.
Well, this is a podcast where we discuss the last week's message at First United Methodist Church as lay persons, laymen. Keith and Mitch here are non-clergy, and we are discussing sermon from November 6, 2022, The Journey of Forgiveness. First in this series is Vengeance. Vengeance. I will have my vengeance. And as always, like to open with our scripture. So I'll read excerpt from Psalm 69:19. Not every verse in there will end up around verse 28. You know how I am scorned, disgraced, and shamed. All my enemies are before you. May their eyes be darkened so they cannot see, and their backs be bent forever. Pour out your wrath on them. Let your fierce anger overtake them. Make their place be deserted. Let there be no one to dwell in their tents. For they persecuted those you wound, and talk about the pain of those you hurt. Charge them with crime upon crime. Do not let them share in your salvation. May they be blotted out of the book of life and not be listed with the righteous.
Let's just pause for a second and go, whoa, let them be blotted out. What was the second one? Romans?
All right, second one, Romans 12, 17 through 21. So at New Testament scripture here. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, it is mine to anger, I will repay, says the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals upon his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good.
Yeah, so the first thing that I want to make clear is if somebody didn't hear the sermon or listen to the sermon or anything like that, right? The first one was Psalm, and the person that's writing this psalm is not wanting to be vengeful on somebody themselves. They're asking God to take vengeance on somebody, because the first line is, you know that I'm scorned, disgraced, ashamed. All my enemies are before you. Take vengeance for me, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think, if you don't hear that little bit, you're like, whoa, those are like two wildly different, parts of the Bible, right? Where I'm going to take vengeance. And they really are. But I just want to point out that, Adam's kind of maybe main thought process in the sermon is that you don't have to take out vengeance. Let God sort it out. You can feel vengeful, but don't act on it, right?
Yeah, and we've got some options. And, he spells out some options that we have in dealing with our vengeance. And, he brings out a interesting point in opening is as vengeance is a human desire, but God's to decide.
Yeah.
So it's our, we have these desires for vengeance, but we need to recognize and understand taking that into our own hands isn't what we're called to do.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed that portion to where he's calling out, it's okay to have the feeling, right? Yeah. Because I think too often you have the feeling and then you're like, I'm not supposed to have this feeling.
Shame and guilt.
Then you feel kind of all like you don't want to tell anybody about it either because, you're not supposed to have that feeling of wanting to extract revenge on somebody. But it's okay to have the feeling. You just don't have to act on it.
Act on it.
Right. And so it's
a human emotion.
It was a human emotion. And that was really helpful for me, I think, because so often I don't want to say so often I do want vengeance on somebody, but so often when something happens and I'm like, oh,
you go to a dark place.
Yeah, and I feel bad about it, but I shouldn't, right? So anyway, so I thought that was super helpful.
Well, repenting is good,
Yeah.
right?
As long as you're sorry for it.
Right? Like I've gone to a dark place.
I enjoyed my time there.
Lord, help me out of this pit of despair
Right.
before it overtakes me.
Yeah. 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 So I thought that was really, I thought that was a really good point to make. So.
Yeah, and another good point I want to reiterate. He has this quote from Eugene Peterson, who when speaking about we should think of the Psalms as both poetry and prayer, he's quoted with, "These two features, the poetry and the prayer, account for both the excitement and the difficulty in studying. The excitement and difficulty in studying the Psalms. The poetry requires that we deal with our actual humanity. Those are those emotions we're talking about. The prayer requires that we deal with God. This God who is determined on nothing less than the total renovation of our lives."
Yeah. I'm gonna be honest and say normally I steer clear of Psalms.
Yeah.
It's not something that I sit down and I'm like, you know what, this month I'm going to go through Psalms. Because they're so one-off, right? I mean, they're not, it's not a story like Mark or Matthew or John, it's not a story that you're reading through like Exodus or whatever. It's just, hey, here's a song.
Yeah, and
hey,
it's a psalm and it's a song.
It's a song, or a prayer, So yeah, I mean,
and sometimes we think, wow, those don't fully make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But yet some of them speak to you.
Yeah.
And how cool is that this is thousands of years old, these lyrics, because if they're psalms, they're songs, it's lyrical. So how much in your life, like, you had songs that, like, speak to you and you get the lyrics out and, like, 3 lines really hit home.
Oh, yeah.
And some of it leaves you scratching your head. And you have no idea what that guy was talking about. Right? How cool is it that like, you think thousands and thousands of years later our lyrical artistry would be very crisp and understandable, and the human experience and emotion is so individual and complex that only the parts and pieces of it are, it's so complex that different parts speak to you at different times.
Right. So like the classic example would be if you're sad, you're feeling down, you're feeling whatever, and you turn on some music that is sad and down. You're like, this song is saying what I'm thinking right now. This song is meant for me, But then, like, when you're happy and you're like at a party and you're having a good time and you play this like downer song, you're like, fast forward, like I want to have just like you're bringing us down. This is not what I'm feeling right now, right? So yeah, we connect to music in the moment too, right? So if you're feeling down and out and you play on some good tunes and you're jamming out, you can change your mood a little bit. Yeah. So next time I feel vengeful, I'm going to go to this psalm.
This one?
I am going to cross stitch this.
Are you? I was thinking about that. I think, like, I don't know that I get it cross stitched, but maybe we could just, like, print a poster. Just a digital cross stitch. You can probably put a filter on. I mean, I don't want to go through the work of cross stitching anything.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask somebody that knows how to cross stitch it. We could hang it on the wall right back here.
And it would be behind.
So it would just be, a song of vengeance.
A psalm of vengeance.
Oh, I'm sure some people listening to this right now want vengeance on us. Anyway. So you were talking about earlier the 3 things. So I think this is key. The 3 things that you can do. Okay, something happened. You feel vengeful.
Yeah, we want to move beyond the emotion experience of.
So what do you do? What do you do about it? Right,
desiring
vengeance,
vendetta,
V for vendetta.
Desiring that and moving beyond it into obedience.
Yeah, well, don't get ahead of it.
Sorry.
What I'm saying is, there's 3 things you can do. So you're feeling vengeful.
I can do it.
Yeah, three things. You can either do it,
Yep.
which is like probably not appropriate, right?
Yeah.
You can deny it, right? You know, which is kind of my thing, right? Which is, you know, what I said earlier. It's like I just kind of like, oh, I didn't feel that way. You know, like you just deny it, right? But it just builds up inside, right? And you know, at some point it boils over, and it's a problem.
You know, my son.
Yeah.
The other night, I'm watching the World Series. Mm-hmm. Watching some baseball.
Oh, is the World Series on?
World Series on.
I just did that for you.
That's fine. So I'm watching some baseball, and my son, who's it's games on after dinner, like they gotta get that sugar out of the like
Sure.
like they eat and then they have to move.
Yeah.
But now it's getting dark out.
Yeah.
It's like they can't be outside. And so I have compassion for the Wiggles. Right?
Sure.
Which is fine. I have an entire house. You can go wiggle wherever you want,
Right.
right? Like knock yourself out. But they want to wiggle near you.
Sure.
They
don't want to be all rambunctious.
They don't want to be alone
by themselves.
No, they want to wiggle in your presence. So anyway, he's doing these, and he has his football, this little football, and he's just throwing himself these little diving catches onto the couch, right next to me, which I tolerate for half a dozen passes, and then I'm calmly like, hey. Man, could we okay, that's
simmer
enough.
down.
He's like, one more. All right, one more. And then he's moves on to diving catches on the ground right in front of me.
So you stop jumping on the couch.
Right. And I'm just progressively, desiring some vengeance here. So I want, you talk about the just do it. I want to take the football, walk to the door, open it,
chuck
and
it as
punt
hard
the
as you
thing
can.
into the darkness. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the do it.
Yeah.
But
deny it is to keep ignoring it until all of a sudden
and I denied
it blows up even more.
I denied it for another 15 minutes of Sports Center, internal small child superstar in their head moments.
I'll tell you what.
And then I never ended up deferring to God.
To use another baseball reference, when the Royals were in the World Series and they had that outage in the TV truck. I don't know if I was on Google Fiber at the time or whatever, and I think it only happened to Google Fiber customers or anyway, there was an outage, right? Right towards the end of one, or it was right towards the end or the beginning or something. You're all tense, and there's this outage and it's gone. Right. And you're what happened? What happened? What's going on? It was gone for 25 minutes, a long time. And then they, it came back or whatever. But I was feeling pretty vengeful at that point. I was I'm going to drive down to the stadium. I'm going to find out what's going on, I was just mad. And Piper, who's, 8 now, was only 3 months old. I'm holding Piper, feeding her, and
Nothing.
Nothing.
That was a really good noise. That was really good.
Well, in the motion too. You can't see it. You can see it if you're watching us on YouTube, but that where the screen goes down and just goes into a thin white line, and you're like, what happened? What happened? Yeah. Anyway. So, but Adam says you shouldn't act on it. You shouldn't deny it. What you should do is defer to God, right? That vengeance is a human desire, but God's to decide. And I
like this. I think this would be a good experiment. So next time I got the football thing happening right in front of me, I'll just out loud verbal request for God to intervene. And I wonder if it's going to work.
I might have frequently in the past said something like, you need to stop doing XYZ. So help me God. I will ask God to take vengeance on you. I'm pretty sure I've said that multiple times in the past. So, anyway. I save that for rare if usually when the kids are fighting with each other, right? And then you separate them, but then somehow they come back together. If if your sister's annoying you, go to the other room.
Right. Just
go away, right?
Yeah.
And then when you separate them, you're like, hey, you go play on your Switch in your room.
Hey, I got one.
And then the other sister follows them. It's like, why are you following them?
I don't know, but I got one rule. If you could figure out, you could be the perfect parent. If you could get one rule.
Okay.
If you could get your kids, everybody listening, everybody's keyed in.
I'm ready.
If you can get your kids to do this, parenting is a breeze until they're 18 and gone. Ready?
Okay.
Don't
Talk.
touch anyone.
Don't touch anyone at any point ever. No hugs. Do not hug your father. Do not hug your mother.
Touch anyone. That's the one rule. Parenting would be the easiest thing ever.
I don't think that's going to work.
I don't think
that's going to work. There's a famous story, and I'm trying to remember if it was
I'm not
King
talking
David
about the.
with trying to figure out what language God spoke. Do you know this story?
No, go for it.
I don't know if it was King David or anyways, there was this king, and he was like, I want to find out what language like humans speak naturally. Okay? And so he took a bunch of babies, like 100 babies or something, okay? And he
This is great.
And he had them all.
Stole babies.
Well, I mean, you're the king.
This is like 101 Dalmatians.
You're the king. And he had nurses take care of these babies, right? But the nurses weren't allowed to talk to them. They could like pick them up, feed them, whatever, put them back. But they weren't allowed to talk because he wanted to find out when these babies grew up what language they spoke. Okay, obviously this guy wasn't very smart, but they all died within like a month, and it's this famous what is it? Not sociology, psychology. Anyway, story that they try to relate that you need human interaction to thrive, right? Like you can't not have interaction with humans, other human beings, and be okay, right? But you made me think of that, you don't touch or talk to anyone at any point in time,
ever.
Never. If someone falls down, do not help them up.
No.
I don't think they would be good people at 18.
I was very much half joking. I was
half joking.
I was identifying that 99.9% of parenting troubles come with, because somebody touched somebody.
Yeah.
He touched me.
Foot touched me when I was on the couch. Mm-hmm. So, I like to wrap this up with a thought that was, I don't know if he said it implicitly or not explicitly, but he kind of implicitly applied it, which is, it doesn't mean, though, that when something happens that you don't do anything about it, right? It's just don't take vengeance on the person. So like, if you and I get in a giant argument and you say something mean to me, right? I don't never come back to you and say, hey, that was kind of mean.
No, I think where you're wrapping up is back in Romans, where do not repay evil with evil, right? If I say something mean, don't just say something mean back. That's not helpful. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone, right? We have righteousness in us to identify, we identify good versus evil. We recognize appropriate human action and behavior. We don't have to, there's not a single culture in the world where if I punch you in the nose right now, that's that's like a loving embrace.
Right.
We understand. So do what is right in the eyes of everyone, the natural, that, and then if what's he say? Paul says, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, so everything in your power, live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, but leave room for God's wrath. So kind of release that.
Yeah.
Release that.
But
anger.
and then I want to make the point. It's not forgive and forget.
Correct.
Right? It's not forgive and forget. It's you're okay to feel the emotion. Don't act on the emotion in a vengeful way, but instead do everything that is seen as good. So going back to the person and saying, "Hey, you shouldn't have said that." Like,
Be the bigger person.
That really hurt me, and giving them a chance to be like, "I'm sorry, I said that in the moment," or giving them the chance to show you that they're really not a nice person and be like, "Well, I meant it," But it's not forgive and forget. It's not, something happens to you and you just, let it go, let God figure it out. Let me walk away. It's you still, there's room to do something to at least try to remedy the situation.
Yeah, and I think Paul goes on to give you some if you're really interested in doing some things, right? Like you get really angry, so you're gonna like clean the house. You ever done that? Angry
yeah.
Cleaning, angry
yeah.
dish scrubbing.
Do you angry clean in front of the person that you're angry?
Never.
Do you ever angry clean in front of the person that
would
you're angry
anger
about,
me,
and you're angry about cleaning?
That's never happened to me. But see, that would say you would be implying that the anger is coming from inside the house.
I'm just saying, angry cleaning is like one of my go-tos.
Is it? Is it a spiritual gift?
Oh, it's my go-to. Angry cleaning. Do you ever angry clean and you just move stuff from one place to the next, and then you turn around and move it back?
That's angry decluttering.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean like I get the Windex and I like windows, so like I get the Windex out, paper towels, and but like. You're just so mad. You're just like, oh, this doesn't belong here. I'm just going to put it here. Oh, this doesn't belong here. I'm just going to put it back. So I'm less angry. I'm going to go to the windows.
These tax papers don't have a home, but they're very important.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of, got some on top of a computer at home.
So here is your to-do list. If you are experiencing this and you got to take action, he says, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals upon his head.
Oh, what great language.
It's kind of words of wisdom to be like, be the bigger.
Yeah, so if you're mad at somebody for not cleaning, you should clean in front of them. Reap those burning coals on their head.
I don't think that's it at all.
And I'm just going to leave it with that.
Let's let it hang.
This is Keith.
This is Mitch, and you've listened to Layman's Term Podcast. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.
Bye.